Welcome to the Ultimate Trumpet Podcast. I'm Bella, here with Adam, and today we're diving into something that I think is going to resonate with anyone who's ever wondered what it actually takes to play at the very highest level of the orchestral world. This episode is based on a trumpetstudio.com article by Michael Droste, and today's topic is Adolph Herseth and the Chicago Sound.
Adolph Bud Herseth. If you're not already familiar with that name, you need to be. He held the principal trumpet chair of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra from 1948 until his retirement in 2001. That's 53 years in one of the most demanding chairs in the orchestral world, longer than any other principal in that orchestra's history. He played under Fritz Reiner, Jean Martignon, Georg Solti, Daniel Barenboim, some of the most legendary conductors of the 20th century. And he made some of the most demanding trumpet writing in the repertoire sound like there was absolutely nothing difficult about it.
Michael Droste was fortunate enough to be part of the Chicago brass world during the years when Herseth was still actively playing, and he attended a Herseth masterclass in person. So what we're sharing today isn't secondhand mythology. It's the real story from someone who was there.
Let's start with what the Chicago Sound actually was, because that phrase gets thrown around a lot without people being specific about what they mean. When you listen to Herseth, a few things stand out immediately. First is what you'd call core density, a dark, centered, focused quality right in the middle of every note. Weight and presence without ever turning coarse or spread. Second is evenness across the registers. His tone in the upper register didn't thin out the way most players does. He maintained that same core density from low C all the way up through high C and beyond. And third, and this one is harder to describe, there was command. Every note communicated that the player was completely in control. Nothing was forced. Nothing was squeezed. The music came from a place of total security.
And here's something that's worth being clear about because a lot of players get this wrong. The Chicago Sound was not simply loud. Yes, the CSO brass under Solti was one of the loudest orchestral brass sections ever recorded. But the tone quality itself was not defined by size. It was defined by character. You could hear Herseth's sound at a soft dynamic and it still had that quality. That's the distinction. Power was something he could turn on when the music called for it. Character was always there.
Now, Herseth was famously reluctant to talk in detail about the mechanics of how he played. And that wasn't false modesty. He genuinely believed, and I think correctly, that overanalyzing the physical side of trumpet playing pulls players away from music making and into a kind of paralytic self-consciousness. His whole approach was oriented toward the result you were trying to create, not the mechanical process of creating it.
That said, you can piece together a picture from the people who worked with him. His embouchure was firm but not rigid, consistent support without the kind of muscular tension that would interfere with vibration. He was not a high-pressure player. He didn't crush the mouthpiece against his lips to get the upper register. He relied on air support and a stable embouchure setting that stayed consistent across the full range.
And that brings us to the most important technical element of all, his air use. Herseth understood something that connects directly to the approach of his colleague Arnold Jacobs, who was the CSO's tubist and one of the great brass pedagogues in history. The air is the engine of everything. The embouchure doesn't produce sound. The air produces sound. The embouchure shapes and focuses it. Players who reverse that priority, who try to create tone through muscular manipulation while treating the air as secondary, are working against the instrument.
What this meant in practice was that Herseth's playing always had a sense of the air moving through the horn rather than being pushed against the mouthpiece. There's a difference between those two things that's easy to hear once you understand it. And if you listen to any of his recordings with that idea in your head, you'll hear it immediately.
Now, we can't talk about Herseth without mentioning the mouthpiece, He played on a hybrid piece, a Schilke custom rim on a Bach 1C underpart, built to his personal specifications. It's a screw rim design, and Michael Droste actually owns one of these pieces, acquired by recommendation through his college trumpet teacher. It's engraved 1CH, the H standing for Herseth, and it's one of the more remarkable items in his collection.
The Bach 1C underpart gave Herseth the standard backbore for sustained, powerful symphonic playing. The Schilke rim provided the width and comfort for sustained, powerful symphonic playing. Together, the combination produced a response characteristic that suited his particular way of playing.
But here's the important lesson, and Michael is very direct about this. The mouthpiece didn't make Herseth's sound. His sound was the product of 50-plus years of playing at the absolute highest level, an extraordinary natural gift, and a deeply internalized musical conception. The mouthpiece was chosen to serve that sound, not to create it. Players who go hunting for the Herseth mouthpiece hoping to pick up some of his tone are looking in exactly the wrong direction. It doesn't work that way.
Now, what did Herseth actually teach? Because this is where things get really interesting. Michael attended a master class with Herseth, and a few things from it have stayed with him ever since. One was what Herseth said about phrasing. He played a passage, and it was technically correct. Right notes, right rhythm, and the right dynamic. We would have been all grateful just to play that passage as technically correct as he played.
Herseth then played the same passage musically. Same notes, same tempo, same dynamic range, and it was completely different. It breathed, it had direction, you could hear intention behind every note. He talked about thinking in phrases rather than in notes. And that sounds obvious when you say it, but it is actually one of the hardest things to internalize as an instrumentalist, because the instrument itself focuses your attention on individual notes. The fingering, the tongue stroke, the slot, the tone quality, all of that can fracture the musical line if you're not actively working against it.
The other thing Herseth said that has stuck with Michael, and I think this is worth writing down, is that the music tells you what the body needs to do. Not the other way around. Most players approach a difficult passage by thinking about the physical challenge first. The high notes, the fast passages, the dynamic extremes. And then they try to layer musical expression on top of the physical execution. Herseth inverted that. He started with the music, with the phrase and its character and its destination, and let that determine the physical approach. The body followed the imagination.
That's a fundamental shift in how you think about playing. And it's not something you pick up from a method book. It's the kind of wisdom that comes from a lifetime at the highest level.
And speaking of things you don't find in method books, let's talk about the tuba mouthpiece story, because this one gets passed around in Chicago brass circles, and Michael can confirm it directly. When new trumpet players joined the CSO, Herseth had a warm-down practice he recommended for after concerts. He told them to buzz on a tuba mouthpiece for a few minutes.
The idea was practical. After 2.5 hours of intense orchestral playing, buzzing on a tuba mouthpiece, much larger cup, much lower resistance, encouraged the lip tissue to release tension and recover more completely than simply stopping playing. The blood flow to the embouchure muscles was maintained during the warm-down, but without the compression and effort required to produce the high frequencies the trumpet demands.
That's the kind of knowledge that lives inside professional orchestras and gets passed from player to player. Herseth wasn't a prolific publisher of pedagogical material. He taught through doing and through direct communication, and a lot of what he knew survives only in the memories of the people who worked alongside him.
Which brings us to the larger legacy. What Herseth established was a standard, not just a level of technical proficiency. There have always been technically proficient players, but a standard for what the instrument could sound like when everything was working at the highest level. He demonstrated that you could play orchestral trumpet with a tone that was simultaneously powerful and refined. that the demands of the symphonic repertoire didn't require sacrificing beauty of tone for volume and projection.
Every player who came after him at the CSO and everywhere else had a benchmark. You could play Mahler, Strauss, Mussorgsky, and do it with a sound that had genuine musical character. Herseth proved that was possible.
And he also embodied something important about musicianship more broadly. Technique is in service of music, not the other way around. Everything he did technically, the air support, the embouchure setting, the phrase shaping, the dynamic control, was oriented toward a musical result. He was never practicing technique for its own sake. He was always practicing music.
That's the lesson that doesn't age. The specific equipment, the physical details, the particular qualities of the Chicago acoustic. Those things are interesting, and they matter. But they're not the core of what he left behind. What he left behind was a demonstration of what's possible when a great talent commits completely to musical excellence over a career spanning more than 5 decades.
And that is worth thinking about every single time you pick up the horn.
Before we close today, a quick reminder about some essential resources. If you need the latest practice material, be sure to check out the Ultimate Warm-Up Book for Trumpet and the Ultimate Technical Study for Trumpet. And if you're getting ready for the gigging season, don't forget your copy of the Ultimate Wedding Book for Trumpet. All of them are available at trumpetstudio.com.
And if you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It genuinely helps other trumpet players find the show. While you're at it, check out the Trumpet Studio app. Everything from scales to etudes to warm-up routines right there in your pocket.
This episode is based on the trumpetstudio.com article, Adolph Herseth and the Chicago Sound, What Made His Tone Unmistakable, by Michael Droste. Go read the full article at trumpetstudio.com for everything we covered today and more.
Now go practice.